Welcome back to the exciting book of Genesis. Moving right along. Today we're going to be taking a look at Genesis chapter 38. How did I miss that big 3, right? Genesis chapter 38. Let's jump right in. Let me have my first reader read Genesis 38, 1 through 5, please.
And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned into certain Adulamite, whose name was Hira. And Yehudah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite, whose name was Shua. And he took her and went in unto her. And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And she conceived again and bare a son, and she called his name Onan. And she yet again conceived and bare a son, and called his name Shelah. And he was at Shizib when she bare him.
Hallelujah. Okay, so here it is. We see that Yehudah. Now, first of all, let us consider the theme of things, the scheme of things, rather. Here it is. We're going through Genesis, and we get to the story of Yaakov. We're going through the story of Yaakov, and he finally gets free from Laban, right? And so now he's free from Laban, and he's dwelling in the land, and he has this problem with his daughter getting raped and over in Shechem. They handle that, and Yah freed him from that situation, and now he goes, and it seems as though he settled for a bit, and one day his sons was out, pasturing with the sheep, and he sends the youngest son, who was Joseph. He sends him out to go check on him, and finds out that they weren't where they were supposed to be. They weren't where they were supposed to be, and so here it is. The brother ends up finding them, and they plotted against the brother because they knew he was a tattletale. They plotted against him and ended up selling him into slavery. And then right in the middle of this story concerning Joseph, in chapter 37, then it pops up in it. We go into chapter 38, and it's talking about something totally different. And then in chapter 39, it picks back up again with the story of Joseph. That's one of the things that I call a remez. A hint. Yah is saying, hey, understand this. Understand why this is here. Because it's so out of place that it's just screaming for us to recognize it. But one of the things that Yah has shown me is that when you look at the account here, how he just sticks Yehudah right in the midst of this, right in the midst of the story of Joseph. It shows how the two are forever, will forever be intertwined. And also, you consider that these are the two kingly lines. The house of Yehudah and the house of Ephraim. Which will come from Joseph eventually. We haven't gotten there yet. But these are the two kingly tribes. The ones in which kings, will come from. The main kings, anyway. So, and that's why, it's here. And you notice that within the narrative, it never goes off into any of the other sons and what happened with them. There was 12 of them. How come it doesn't go into each and every one of them? It doesn't. But it addresses the two lines in which the kings will come from. Yehudah and Ephraim. So, I just wanted to point that out because that goes over so many, most people's head, and I don't want it to go over your head. I want you to be able to see that Yah is saying, hey, I'm about to tell you about, where these kings come from. Amen. you know, where Yah's kings come from. You know, and ultimately they both speak to our Messiah Yahushua. You know, but here it is. You know, we have Genesis 38, and it's talking about Yahudah. He done left his dad, which was, you know, an uncommon thing to do during that time. But we see he done left his dad. It said it came to pass that Yahudah went down from his brethren. He left his brethren, left his dad, and turned into a certain Adulamite, whose name was Kira. Now, this Adulamite, his name means justice of the people. So we see he was likely a judge. You know, Kira means to whiten or speaks to a noble family. So we see, you know, him being a judge and of a noble family. You know, and it says Yahudah saw there a daughter of a certain Canaanite. Canaanite can speak to the merchants, can also speak to them who are humble. You know, and her name was Shua. Her father's name was Shua. She was the daughter of Shua. Shua means salvation. So right here we see Yahudah getting with salvation. You know, and how many of you know that, you know, ultimately our Messiah was of the tribe of Yahudah, and he was with salvation. Amen. You know, so we can see, you know, these things, you know, the foreshadowing of these things, you know, even in the ancient history of the people. You know, and so here it is, it says he saw a daughter of the Canaanite whose name was Shua, you know, and took her and went in unto her. She became his wife, and she conceived and bare a son. Er means awake or awaking. You know, and this is ultimately what came from the union of the Yahudah, or the praises of Yah, and the daughter of salvation. What came from that was an awakening and a stirring up. That's what would come from that, you know. And also, you know, they had another son, and his name was Onan. And what would come from that union would also be vigor and strength, but unfortunately also iniquity. And Shelah, you know, also will come from that union, which speaks to a request or a petition, or another word for synonym for a request or petition is prayer. You know, and it says that he was at Kazib when she bare him. So, you know, Kazib means lying or falsified or false. So we put these things together. We have a praiser of Yah leaving his brethren and going to a justice of the people, a judge, a righteous, non-working might. I just thought we was going to get through this too. But I think okay. You know, so he gets with this righteous noble family. While there, he meets the daughter of salvation, marries her, have two sons, have three sons actually. The firstborn, the awakening, or stirring up; the second, strong, vigorous, and iniquitous; and his third son is born in falsehood, born into a lie. You know, and he is requested or petitioned or prayed for. You know, and that's important because, you know, many of us were born into some lies. Yeah. Amen. You know, so let's keep it moving. Verses 6 through 8 goes on to saying, Yahudah took a wife for Er, his firstborn, whose name was Tamar. Now, Tamar means palm tree, so he knew how to pick them. You know, Yahudah, you know, he knew how to pick them. He picked a good one for himself, you know, one that came from salvation. Now he's picking one for his son, and she's a palm tree, you know, because she was tall. No, because she was upright, you know, because she was righteous. You know, so here it is, he picked them good. So, you know, I encourage all you youth, before you get with someone, confer with your parents.
All right.
You know, see, because, you know, oftentimes, you know, I know you think you know, you know, but your parents have more experience dealing with people, and a lot of times they can spot, you know, let's just say a fake, you know, from a ways away, right? You know, so it's always good to confer with your parents and your grandparents, you know, because wisdom comes in a multitude of counsel, amen? You know, so don't just grab at the first thing you see, you know. So this is the way it was back when they were wiser back in the days of Scripture, you know. And so it says Yahudah took a wife for his heir's firstborn, whose name was Tamar, a palm tree, a righteous woman, you know. And it says, and Yahudah's firstborn, was wicked. Now, righteousness and wicked don't go together. And so they got together and they was married, you know. And, you know, I'm sure Yahudah was praying that, you know, the righteousness rubbed off on his son, you know. But, you know, it says that he was wicked in the sight of Yahudah, and Yahudah slew him. Maybe, you know, she was a little too righteous for him. You know, Yahudah didn't want her to be, you know, tainted by him. So, you know, away he went. And Yahudah said unto Onan, go in unto thy brother's wife and marry her and raise up seed to thy brother. Now, this may sound strange to some folk. You know, wait a minute, hold on. You tell me that, you know, her husband died and then the father sends the brother to be with her? You know, and this sounds kind of strange, you know, in our culture today, but, you know, this, you know, had been, had been part of the culture for a very long time, or part of the culture of Israel for a very long time, because we see later on it becomes a part of the law. And so let's take a look in Deuteronomy 25 verses 5 and 6. We actually see, you know, that it did become a part of the law. It says, if brethren dwell together and one of them die and have no child, the wife of the dead shall not marry without unto a stranger. Her husband's brother shall go in unto her and take her to him to wife, and perform the duty of a husband's brother unto her. And it shall be that the firstborn which she beareth shall succeed in the name of his brother which is dead, that his name be not put out of Israel. And so you see, this was a practice, you know, that was to keep, you know, one who may have died without having an offspring, you know, from losing everything that he worked so hard for. You know, and so that this way, you know, it would go on in his name, and he would have, you know, someone to carry forth his name. You know, and so this was the culture, and they understood this, and so did Onan. He understood this as well. And guess what? Verse 9 says, and Onan knew that the seed should not be his. And it came to pass when he went into his brother's wife. Now, he didn't tell his dad, no, I don't want to go into her. He went into her, but then, you know, because he knew the seed wouldn't be his, it says, it came to pass when he went into his brother's wife that he spilled it on the ground, lest that he should give seed to his brother. You know, now that wasn't cool. You know, now, Onan not impregnated Tamar because he knew that the seed wouldn't be his. You know, but also that put him in a position to gain more. See, because if he didn't raise up a seed to his brother was his eldest brother, and in being his eldest brother, he had the birthright. The birthright was a double portion. So if his brother died off and didn't have a seed, then the double portion goes to who? Yeah. Absolutely. So you see his interest in maybe not bringing forth that seed. Now the double portion goes to him. If he has a child by this woman, then the double portion is going to go to that child. You follow me? Yeah. You know, see, the love of money is the root of all evil. Amen. You know, and so here it is. This is you know, it's obviously he had something to this degree in mind, you know, for he chose not to because he knew that the seed wouldn't be his. You know, and so let's see what happens next. Verses 10 and 11, it says, "And the thing which he did displeased Yahuwah, wherefore he slew him also." See, now that wasn't good, now was it? You know, now here it is, he got out of raising the seed up for his brother, but he don't have to worry about raising the seed up for anyone now, right? You know, so verse 11 says, "Then said Yahudah to Tamar, his daughter-in-law, Remain a widow at thy father's house till Shelah my son be grown. For he said, Lest peradventure he die also, as his brethren did. And Tamar went and dwelt in her father's house." Now hereby we see the praiser of Yah. He takes a palm tree, you know, that is an upright, righteous wife for his wicked son, Er, that was awakening and stirring up stuff. But Yah takes his life. Then the praiser of Yah gives the upright Tamar to his second son, Onan, that is strong and vigorous, yet iniquitous. You know, but due to his iniquity, Yah takes his life also. Lastly, Yahudah, the praiser of Yah, does like many parents may have done in that situation, and blamed righteous Tamar for his son's death. When his sons died really because of their own iniquity. You know, and he then bound his last son, and trying to save him, he actually bound him, you know, who was actually born in Kezib, or born in falsehood with a lie. He bound him to a lie, thinking that he would save him. And the lie that he bound him to was that, hey, I'm not going to, you know, I'm going to give my last son to you, Tamar, when he gets of age. But he knew it was a lie when he said it. You know, because he was afraid that he would lose his son. You know, and so what I want you to see and what I want you to take from this is, you know, when you, for those of you who have children and those of you who will have children, don't be afraid to judge righteously concerning your own children. See, a lot of times, you know, you look at the situation, even as Yahudah was looking at the situation and saying, oh, it must be something wrong with Tamar. You know, my first son died after he got with her. My second son died after he got with her. I'm not about to give her my third son and watch him die too. Something must be wrong with her. No, something must be wrong with your sons. Right. See, there's a flip side to the coin. And a lot of times we don't want to look, you know, at the flip side of that coin because it's ugly. You know, we don't want to look and see, well, maybe something wrong with my sons. Maybe my son's not right. Maybe my children not right. Maybe it's not this. See, you have to look into the situation. You have to judge with righteous judgment. You have to look at it from 360 degrees. You can't just look at the surface. And this is what Yahudah was doing, and this is where he made his mistake. You know, and so, you know, I encourage us today to learn from this ancient lesson. You know, and be fair in your assessment, not only of yourself, but of your children. You know, so many parents think their children can do no wrong. You know, some of them just as wicked and crooked as, yeah. Anyway, don't be afraid to exercise righteous judgment. I implore you, utilize righteous judgment, even in your own situations, even with your own children. You know, for in doing so, you may find a way to save them. Don't follow the example of Yahudah. Here it is, he tried to get out of the situation by telling a lie and end up binding his last son with a lie. You know, not good. You know, so let's see what happens next. Let me have my next reader read Genesis 38:12 through 15.
And in process of time, the daughter of Shua, Judah's wife, died. And Judah was comforted and went up unto the sheep shearers to Timnath, he and his friend Hira the Adullamite. And it was told Tamar, saying, Behold, thy father-in-law goeth up to Timnath to shear his sheep. And when she put her widow's garments off from her, and covered her with a veil, and wrapped herself, and sat in an open place, which is by the way to Timnath. For she saw that Shelah was grown, and she was not given unto him to wife. When Judas saw her, he thought her to be a harlot, because she had covered her face.
All right. Now I want to point out something here, because a lot of people, a lot of people think this way, but I don't want you all to think this way. Because one is righteous, don't make them a fool.
All right.
Hello, somebody. I want you to know and understand that because one is righteous, because one lives an upright life, that don't make them a fool. Now here it is, Tamar, who was upright and righteous, yet she wasn't a fool. She saw Shelah was grown and she was not given unto him the wife. She figured out what was going on. And so she plotted and planned. She plotted and planned. Now, we're going to give her a pass on this because she didn't know Yah.
Right.
But I'm going to implore you not to plot and plan, but to seek Yah. But she plotted and planned because she didn't know Yah. We know Yah.
That's right.
She was a pagan. It says, now, when Yahudah saw her, he thought her to be a harlot because she made herself to look like one. And she had covered her face so that she wouldn't be recognized. Now, he was going up to Timnah, which speaks to, which means portion or sign. And this word harlot is zanah, number 2181, and it means highly or overly fed. Whoredom, fornication. Okay, now, the thing is like, okay, well, how did she know that he would be looking for a harlot? And so the thing is that you need to understand is the culture. The culture during that time. See, during that time, they worship sun gods and fertility gods, and unfortunately, Yahudah, probably partook in this as well, when he left from his father's reign. When he left his brethren and he began to dwell with these other people, oftentimes you take on the attributes of those people. You begin to take on, parts to their traditions and cultures as well when you're living with other group of people. Amen. And so I'm gonna let you in on a cultural aspect of the pagans. They had something that they refer to as the devotees of the mother goddess Ishtar, where we get Easter from. And these devotees of the mother goddess Ishtar would reside at or near shrines and would dress in a veil as the symbolic bride of the sun god Baal. Men would visit the shrine and use the services of the co-prostitutes prior to planting their fields or during other important seasons such as shearing of or the period of lambing. Now remember, it says that he was going to shear his sheep. See, he went up to his sheep shearers to Timnah. See, this is, what he was likely practicing. He was serving this pagan god. Men would visit the shrine and use the services of the co-prostitutes prior to planting their fields or during other important seasons such as shearing or period of lambing. In this way, they gave honor to the gods and reenacted the divine marriage in an attempt to ensure fertility and prosperity for their fields and herds. And so this is, likely what Yahudah was doing, and this is why he went into the harlot. Not to mention his wife had died, and yeah. So, let's continue on. Let me have my next reader read verses 16 through 21 of Genesis 38.
And he turned unto her by the way, and said, Go to, I pray thee, let me come in unto thee. For he knew not that she was his daughter-in-law. And she said, What wilt thou give me, that thou mayest come in unto me? And he said, I will send thee a kid from the flock. And she said, Wilt thou give me a pledge till thou send it? And he said, What pledge shall I give thee? And she said, Thy signet, and thy bracelets, and thy staff that is in thine hand. And he gave it to her, and came into her, and she conceived by him. And she arose and went away, and laid by her veil from her, and put on the garments of her widowhood. And Judah sent the kid by the hand of his friend the Adullamite to receive his pledge from the woman's hand. But he found her not. Then he asked the men of that place, saying, Where is the harlot that was openly by the wayside? And they said, There was no harlot in this place.
Uh-oh. All right, so here it is. He goes into her. She, she makes like she's a harlot, and he goes into her. And when it's time to pay up, she said, asked what you gonna give. He said, I give a kid from the flock. She said, well, you're gonna have to give me something before, so I know that, I know that I'm gonna get my kid from the goat, And he said, well, I kindly, send it back. No, I need a little pledge or something. Well, what you want? Say, give me your signet, your bracelets, and your staff. Now, the signet is the kotham. It's a signature ring. It symbolizes identity. So she took his identity. The bracelets, speak to twine. It represents a struggle. So she took his identity. She took on his struggles. And she took his staff. The word staff is mateh in the Hebrew, number 4294. And it symbolizes the familial authority. So she took his familial authority. It also symbolizes strength and food supply. So she took hold of his familiar authority, his strength and food supply, and she kept it moving. And so he goes to pay his debt, and they're telling him, oh, there's no harlot in this place. She valued his identity, his struggle, his familiar authority, his strength and food supply more so than she did that kid from the flock. Amen. Okay, verses 22 through 26. My next reader, please.
And he returned to Judah and said, I cannot find her. And also the men of the place said that there was no harlot in this place. And Judah said, let her take it to her, lest we be shamed. Behold, I sent this kid, and thou hast not found her. And it came to pass about 3 months after, that it was told Judah, saying, Tamar thy daughter-in-law has played the harlot, and also, behold, she is with child by whoredom. And Judah said, bring her forth, and let her be burnt. When she was brought forth, she sent to her father-in-law, saying, by the man whose these are, am I with child. And she said, discern, I pray thee, whose are these, the signet, and the bracelets, and staff? And Judah acknowledged them, and said, she hath been more righteous than I, because that I gave her not to Shelah my son, and he knew her again no more.
Okay, so here it is. Time goes by. 3 months went by, and now she's showing. Because the woman began to show after about 3 months, right? So now she's showing. And it was told, Yahudah said, hey, Tamar, thy daughter-in-law, played the harlot. And behold, she is with child by whoredom. Now it sounds as though, Yahudah had a little animosity towards, Tamar, behind his sons. Because there don't appear to be no grace or mercy there. He said, bring her forth and let her be burned. Now, this is as cruel as it sounds. It wasn't out of the ordinary. It was a part of the culture. If a woman committed adultery, unfortunately, this was one of the things that could happen to her. And so, but you didn't have to choose to, to bring that forth. You didn't have to, you could have chose not to do nothing. You could have let it slide. You know what I'm saying? You could have had grace. You could have had mercy. You could have had compassion. Especially seeing that you knew that, you lied to the woman and put her in a bad situation where she could never get with anyone else, but instead he says, bring her forth and let her be burned. Okay. All right. Okay, so here it is. This is what he says, and so she comes forth and she said, look, I know what it looked like, but discern, I pray thee, whose are these? Because by whoever these are, this is who I'm pregnant by. And she gives the signet, the bracelets, and the staff. She shows him his identity, his struggles, and his familiar authority and food supply, and Yahudah acknowledged them and said, she have been more righteous than I. And so she was allowed to live. You know, and it came to pass in the time, verses 27 through 30, and it came to pass in the time of her travail, that behold, twins were in her womb. Hey, she got a 2 for 1. And it came to pass, when she travailed, that the one put out his hand, and the midwife took and bound upon his hand a scarlet thread, saying, this came out first. And it came to pass, as he drew back his hand, that behold, his brother came out, and she said, how hast thou broken forth? This breach be upon thee. Therefore his name was called Pharez. Now Pharez means a breach or a break. Verse 30. And afterward came out his brother that had the scarlet thread upon his hand, and his name was Zerah. Zerah means returning or rising. Now, this passage speaks prophetically to the birth of Yochanan the Immerser and Yahushua. Yahushua, who was first, you know, because he was before all, you know, and in a way he was a type of twin to Yochanan, you know, spiritually speaking. You know, Yochanan 1:15 says, Yochanan bear witness of him, cried, saying, this was he of whom I spake, he cometh after me, is preferred before me, for he was before me. You know, and he was truly around before Yochanan the Immerser. You know, now I'm going to present to you a spiritual picture, you know, in that Yochanan the Baptist and Yahushua were like twins, in the sense that they both were fathered, you know, of the nation of Yahudah, you know, via the palm tree. They both came forth from Yahudah via righteousness, you know, and they were born around the same time, you know, and were the same age. You know, Yochanan was 6 months older than Yahushua. You know, so, you know, when one was 30, the other one was 30. Amen? You know, so they had the same ministry in the wilderness and the same gospel message concerning repentance and the kingdom of Elohim. And both were martyred. Can you see that they were a type of twins? You know, but Yahushua, the right hand of Elohim, came out first and is witnessed to by the miracle signs and wonders of Yahushua as Elohim prior to the birthing of Yochanan. You know, but then, you know, he was like one that came out and the scarlet thread was put upon his hand. But then you had that break. You know, that break which represents Yochanan the Immerser, who came out and he broke the traditions of his father, you know, in that he chose not to serve in the temple, but served in the wilderness. You know, his father, Zechariah, served in the temple, you know, but he didn't serve in the temple. He served in the wilderness. See, because, you know, the temple had, you know, there was an issue going on during that time, you know, with the temple. There were some priests that usurped some other priests that was in the temple. And so some of those righteous priests, they went out into the wilderness and they served in the wilderness. You know, whereas the ones who had usurped their position served in the temple because they was willing to go along to get along. Amen. And so, you know, now then comes the one who had the scarlet ribbon on his hand. You know, he comes out, end up coming out later, even though he was first, even as Yahushua would come out later. And even as his name was Zerah, which means return or rising, you know, our Messiah rose from the dead and he will return. Amen. You know, now I want you to know and understand that, you know, this is this prophetic picture goes on, you know, not only from that point in time up until Yochanan the Immerser and Yahushua our Messiah, but it extends even to you and I. You know, even to you and I. How many of us in here are praisers of Yah? You know, so that makes us spiritual Yahudim. You know, and we all have a Pharez. We all have a fleshly type of ourself. You know, and if you're father from above, then you'll have a spiritual type of yourself as well. You know, now here it is, they both dwell in the same land, the carnal you and the spiritual you that was fathered from above, if you've been born again, amen?
Amen.
You know, now, here it is, you have these two of you dwelling in the same land, i.e. the same body. You know, now, the thing is, you know, Pharez, even though he came first, you know, he's going to have to submit unto Zerah, to the one who's going to return. You know, he's going to have to submit to the one who came later, the one who was fathered from above, the one who was born again. Amen. You know, I pray that you can see that, you know, the same thing happens to any praiser of Yah. You know, you have both of these twins. You know, you have the fleshly you, you have the spiritual you. You know, and the spiritual you, you know, was known unto Yahweh before the fleshly you. You know, and that's the one that's going to rise unto Yah. That's the one that's going to return unto Yah. You know, so, you know, it's a beautiful spiritual lesson in there. You know, we're going to keep it moving. We're going to go into Genesis 39, you know, and which speaks about Yah's covering. So we're going to jump right in. Let me have my next reader read Genesis 39, 1 through 6, please.
And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, brought him to the hands of the Ishmaelites, which had brought him down thither. And Yahuwah was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. And his master saw that Yahuwah was with him, and that Yahuwah made all that he did to prosper in his hand. And Joseph found grace in his sight, and he served him. And he made him overseer of his house, and all that he had he put into his hand. And it came to pass from that time that he had made him overseer in his house, and over all that he had, that Yahuwah blessed the Egyptian's house for Joseph's sake. And the blessing of Yahuwah was upon all that he had in the house and in the field. And he left all that he had in Joseph's hands, and he knew not aught he had, save the bread which he did eat. And Joseph was a godly person, and was favored.
Hallelujah. Okay, so Joseph, first of all, you know, we're back on Joseph. See how I just flip-flopped again? You know, now we're no longer talking about Yahudah. We're talking about Joseph and his story again. Now it speaks about him being brought down to Egypt. First of all, Joseph, his name means let him add, or he is adding. You know, Egypt speaks to devil straits or devil trouble. You know, and Potiphar, you know, belonging to the son, Pharaoh the great house, Ishmael hearing from Elohim. You know, and so you have, you know, Joseph, one who is adding, going down into devil straits, you know, to those who belong to the son, who's serving the sun God in the great house, you know, and supposedly hearing from Elohim. You know, and so here it is, he becomes a slave there. He becomes a slave there. And it says Yahuwah was with him, though. And he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master, the Egyptian. You know, and what I want you to see, I want you to understand, I want you to grab hold to is that, you know, it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. No matter how menial it may seem to you, Yah can use you.
That's right.
You know, no matter how dire your situation or circumstance may seem, Yah can use you. See, but you just have to trust in him. You know, now even though he was a prisoner, Yah made him the head and not the tail. You know, even though he was a prisoner, he was the head prisoner. Amen? Amen. You know, he was the head prisoner. You know, even though he was a servant, he was the head servant. You know, so it says his master saw that Yahuwah was with him, and that Yahuwah made all that he did to prosper in his hands, so he let him handle everything. You know, he let him handle everything. Now it says that you know, it was something about Joseph, you know, that you need to know. Joseph, it says that he was Yahweh. Oh, I'm sorry. That's translated as goodly. He was goodly, or Yahweh. Yahweh means beautiful. You know, it's a compound word. It comes from a word meaning beautiful and a word meaning outline or figure. Yeah. Yeah, so it's a compound word meaning beautiful and outline of figure. So in other words, he had, you know, he was well built. He was well built. He was beautifully built. He had a beautiful figure. And it also says, you know, that he was well favored. The word well is Yahweh, which again is beautiful. And favor is Mare, which speaks to a view or appearance. So not only was he well built, he looked good. You know, so he was well built and good looking. Oh, he had a package. You know, he was put together, you know, from head to toe. You know, he was built right and looked right. And he was upright. So you can't get no better than that, right? You know, now, verses 7 through 10 goes on to say, and it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph. See, unfortunately, you know, it got the attention of some of the wrong people. Master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, lie with me. But he refused and said, I love this part. I love this passage right here. He refused and said unto his master's wife, behold, my master would not what is with me in the house. And he committed all that he have to my hand. There is none greater in this house than I. Neither have he kept back anything from me, but thee, because thou art his wife. And this is the part I love. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against him? No, he didn't say that, did he? Sin against Elohim. See, you have to get to where he was. You have to get to where he was. And what I mean by that is you got to get to where you understand that your blessings don't come from GM. They don't come from Chrysler. They don't come from your master. They come from Yah. See, even though he was ruling in his house, he was his head servant, he had committed everything to his hand, you know, it looked as though that he was caring for him and that his destiny or that his future was in his hands. But it wasn't. And he understood, Joseph understood that. See, and that's where a lot of us so-called saints fall apart. See, because, you know, we don't want to offend our master. You know, see, but if you're looking at who you serve, and if you're looking at that at your boss as or that company as who you serving, you know, then you got it twisted. See, obviously, this is not what Joseph was looking at, because he was stipulating, and he was telling his master's wife, you know, behold, my master would have not what is with me in his house. He have committed all that he have to my hand. There is none greater than I. Neither have he kept back anything from me. How can I do this great wickedness and sin against Elohim? See, because he understood that this was because of Elohim. You know, so you know it doesn't matter if you're a manager, if you're a big wig in the company that you're dealing with. You know, it's not the company that's keeping you.
That's right. That's right.
Yes, that's the truth.
You know, you have to know and understand, even though everything that you done purchased may have been from the checks that you received from that job, it is not them that's keeping you. Not if you Yah's is not.
That's right.
Not if you Yah's is not. It is not them that's keeping you. It's Yah. See, this is what Joseph understood, and he said, you know, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against Elohim?
Yes.
See, because when you sin, you're not sinning against him, you're sinning against Elohim, because Elohim is your true master.
Yes.
Elohim is your covering. See, you have to understand who your covering is. You have to understand and not get it misconstrued as to who is covering you. You know, it's not that welfare check. That's not what's covering you. got that check from that job, that's not what's covering you. If you are Yah, then it's Yah that's covering you. You have to understand that. And if you offend in any place, you're offending against Yah. You're not offending against the company. If you're stealing from Yah. You're not stealing from the company. You're not giving them what they deserve. If you Yah's, then you are reflecting badly upon him. You making him look bad. Verse 10 says, it came to pass that she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie with her, or to be with her. You know, there's something called the propinquity effect. It speaks to the tendency for people to form friendships or romantic relationships with those that they encounter often. You know, if we wanted to give his wife the benefit of the doubt, we can say this is what it was. I'm just saying. You know, well, I'm not gonna tell y'all what Brother Max said. You know, we just don't give it a benefit of the doubt. You know. Oh my goodness, we're gonna move on. Verse 11, and it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. I wonder if she set this up. And it says in verse 12, she caught him by his garment, saying, lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled and got him out. You know, now I want everybody in here to know and understand this is how you fight the enemy. Sometimes you gotta run. Sometimes you gotta run. You know, sometimes that's how you defend yourself. Sometimes you gotta lace your shoes up real tight and run as fast as you can. You know, because I'm here to tell you, you know, Hasatan is big, bad, and ugly. You know, and if you think you can whoop him, you sadly mistaken. Sometimes the best defense is no defense. Sometimes you got to run. You know, and this is what Joseph did. He ran. He ran like he never ran before, and he left his garment in her hand. Now, it says she caught him by his garment. This word caught is to manipulate. It means, is to faz, meaning to manipulate, to seize, specifically to overlay. You know, and that's what she grabbed hold of his garment and she tried to manipulate him. She tried to seize him. She tried to overlay him, literally. You know, but he wasn't having it. He wasn't having it. You know, he ran. You know, it says that she grabbed hold to his garment. This word garment is beged. It means a covering. It can speak to treachery or pillage, but essentially it's a covering. She grabbed hold to his covering. And watch what happens, what she does with it. Verses 13 through 15, it says, and it came to pass when she saw that he had left his garment in her hand, and was fled forth, that she called unto the men of her house and spake unto them, saying, see, he hath brought in Hebrew unto us to mock us. He came in unto me to lie with me. And I cried with a loud voice. And it came to pass when he heard that I had lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled and got him out. You know, so you got to be able to see that, you know, when he ran, he left part of his covering with her. Said, now, when we allow others to seize us, to manipulate us, to overlay us, Yah's covering, to overlay Yah's covering for our lives, we put the opportunity for treachery and pillage in their hands. You know, whenever we allow others to seize hold of us, manipulate us, or overlay us, you know, Yah's covering for our lives. You know, see, some people, they will try to use our covering against us. When we put it in their hands and give them a chance to do that, you know, we put the opportunity for treachery and pillage into their hands. And that's oftentimes what happens. And this is what's happening with our brother Joseph. Verses 16 through 20 goes on to say, and she laid up his garment by her until his Lord came home. And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, the Hebrew servant, which thou hast brought unto us, came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out. And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, after this manner did the servant to me, that his wrath was kindled. And Joseph's master took him and put him into prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound, and he was there in the prison. This is what can result when we allow others to tafaz, that is to seize and manipulate and overlay y'all's covering for our lives. They can use it against us, and they oftentimes do. You know, oftentimes, you know, they will use our covering against us. You have to know and understand this, because this is a big way that the enemy works. So, you know, what are some of the ways that others can use our covering against us? You know, when we look at scripture, we see Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. You know, because they would not submit themselves to worshiping an idol. You know, their covering was used against them. It was said, okay, well, you know, their covering told them that they couldn't do that, but yet those who knew that, you know, said, hey, they not bowing. They not worshiping when the music come on. They used their covering against them, but that's why y'all walked them up out that fiery furnace. Daniel, he's another one. His covering was used against them. They looked at Daniel and they said, there's no way that we can get unto this guy. He's too upright. He's perfect in every way. Oh, we can get at him through his covering. Yah is his covering. So we're going to make a law saying that he can't pray to no other El, you know, but the pagan god. And so they used his covering against them. But it didn't work, because Yah delivered them from the lion's den. Amen? You know, now, you know, we also can look at some other examples, you know, where we have like the foreign militaries, you know, or David. David is another one. Or Saul with King David. You know, concerning the new moon, he knew that his covering said that he was supposed to meet up for new moon. So during the time of new moon, he decided he was going to plot to kill him. But David just so happened not to show up that time. You know, but again, you see, he was using his covering against them. Even the whole tribe of Yehuda, during the time when they were being seized, the enemy would come and fight with them on the Sabbath, knowing that they couldn't fight on the Sabbath. Again, they were using their covenant, their covering against them. And the reason I'm giving you all these examples is so that you will know that the enemy will use your covering against you. And they do it all the time. You tell somebody you keep the Sabbath, and then they call you and ask you to do something on the Sabbath. Come on, somebody. I know it's done happened to you. You know, that's the enemy trying to use your covering against you. Because if you allow them to use that covering against you, they would use that to manipulate, you know, and to get you to transgress against your El, and then your covering will no longer cover you. You know, so you have to understand how the enemy works. You have to understand how he operates. He will use your covering against you. You know, don't you wonder why everything always takes place on Saturday, on his Sabbath? It always takes place during the time when you're supposed to be devoted to him. Somebody always wants you to do something during that time. Or you dedicate time and you say, well, I'm going to pray during this time. And every time you get ready to pray, somebody want to call you. They haven't called all day, all week, all month. But as soon as you get ready to pray or you get ready to get in his word, this is when they want to call you.
Tell the truth, Pastor. Wow.
Can't you see the enemy is using your covering against you? See, but if you stay true to your covering, even as Joseph stayed true to his covering, it'll always, did I say always? Always work out for you. But you can't let them get the victory. You can't stray from your covering. Even though they grab hold of it and they try to utilize it against you, they won't succeed. Let's see what happens next. Verses 21 through 23 says, but Yahuwah was with Joseph and showed him mercy. Why was Yahuwah with Joseph? Because he did not transgress.
That's right. That's right.
Even though his covering was being used against him, he did not transgress. He knew when he left his garment that it was probably going to be used against him. But he did not transgress. He could have, but he didn't.
That's right.
And because he didn't, we read in verse 21, but Yahuwah was with Joseph and showed him mercy and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. So even though he go to prison, now he rise like cream to the top. of the prisoners. And it says in verse 22, and the keeper of the prison committed to Joseph's hand all the prisoners that were in the prison. And whatsoever they did there, he was the doer of it. The keeper of the prison looked not to anything that was under his hand, because Yahuwah was with him, and that which he did, Yahuwah made it to prosper. So, as we should see later in the story, Joseph never lost his covering. He never transgressed. Even though Potiphar's wife, she tafased, that is, she seized, she manipulated, she overlaid his covering and used it against him. Even though, she did so, what she pleased with his covering, she couldn't obtain, she couldn't bring him down. She couldn't cause him to transgress against his el. And this is why Yah continued to cover him. This is why Yah continued to be with him. Now, she could have got his covering, and she could have used it for herself. She could have used it to cover herself and would have became better because of it. But because she was wicked, she didn't. Now, I want to encourage all those who have had or will have Yah, that is their covering, used against them, that Yah is too big for anyone to completely remove from you. It doesn't matter how they pull and yank on your covering. It don't matter how they try to utilize it against you. They can't remove Yah from you if you stick with him. As long as you don't transgress. They can only expose you in certain areas, but not completely. They can't completely uncover you. And as long as you don't transgress, Yah will be with you, and he will keep you. Lastly, I want to encourage all believers to stop seeking others or themselves for a covering, and truly allow Yah to cover you. Stop trying to cover yourself. Stop trying to let the job cover you. Stop trying to let massa cover you. Understand who your covering is and where your blessings flow from. Trust in him in all your ways, and he will acknowledge you. He will direct your paths. Acknowledge him in all things, and he will direct your paths. This is how a saint's supposed to walk. This is how a saint's supposed to carry on. Do not transgress, no matter what is said, what is done, no matter how they may try to uncover you. Stick with Yah. He's your covering. Even if they expose you in one place, as long as Yah with you, who can be against you? So we have to stop relying on our own resources. Stop relying on our education, our looks, our personality, our experiences, our intelligence and skill sets to cover us. These things only give us an appearance of being covered. But if Yah has you covered, it doesn't matter how much you may look uncovered, you still covered. See, and this is why Joseph, as always, because he kept Yah with him, he never transgressed, he always rise to the top. And he's going to come out of this one okay too. So I encourage you to be as Joseph. Be as Joseph. Keep Yah. Don't transgress. Let him be your covering. Stop trying to cover yourself. That's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.